Hey everyone, I want to show you something. What you're looking at is Google Trends, and this is comparing the trends for Black Lives Matter searches, protesters, protest, and federal troops. The hypothesis is Donald Trump and his actions are causing the search intensity and therefore the message for Black Lives Matter to be reduced, both nationwide and in particular in Oakland. Let's start, first of all, with nationwide version here. And this is what we see. This is over 30-day period, Black Lives Matter trend line coming down. But protest has sank, and now it's increasing. And we have is the appearance of a once flat green line starting to gain life, and that's federal troops. Now, what this looks like in a local Oakland lens is this. Over the same time period, Black Lives Matter reducing, as you can see, all right? If you want a percentage look, 48, start off at 100, the highest you can get. Protesters 8, protests 73, federal troops 0. Makes sense because protests were for Black Lives Matter. But protesters increased, Black Lives Matter decreased, protest was still at 40, at a reasonable level of intensity, went down. But then look what we got. All of a sudden, federal troops, okay? And federal troops were at 0, and now they're coming back into 1, and they're headed to 2 with Trump's threat. Black Lives Matter is at 51 here, protesters 6, protests 7. And then there's this dip with federal troops at 4. All right? Now, that's the Oakland region area here. If we, in California, that's California, but let's take a closer look at San Francisco, Oakland. Black Lives Matter is at 59, protesters 3, protests 38%, federal troops just a shade under 1%. So you would say, wait a minute, Zenny, Black Lives Matter matters, but not as much as it does, say, for example, in Chico, 77%. Okay? Or you would say Stockton, 62%. Or Los Angeles even, 61% with the 1. But why the dip? What's causing this with respect to San Francisco, Oakland? And the answer is quite simple, and it's this. Donald Trump mentioning Oakland for troops caused the effort to focus on federal troops and protesters and less on Black Lives Matter. But Trump was aided by a white-owned media that focuses only on protest and people who say, well, look at the message of the protesters. And the message of the protesters isn't Black Lives Matter. And for a specific reason, the majority of those protesters are not black. They're not directed by Black Lives Matter. And in a number of cases, they've used the Black Lives Matter agenda for their own agenda, which has, nothing to do with being black, because they can actually make the same claims and arguments and not even mention the black problem, okay? I'm just being blunt. Some of you out there, in the case of what I've written, have said, well, you didn't write the article and you didn't mention what the people put on Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf's house. Yeah, because they're criminals. And if you pay attention to the work of the Oakland City Council on a regular basis, which if you live in Oakland, you should, and it's kind of a test to find out whether or not you really live in Oakland and you're posting crap online in places that you really shouldn't be posting it, just saying, all right? Then you would know that the Oakland City Council has done work leading to moratoriums on evictions as recently as last year, extended those moratoriums, and then strengthened them this year, if you were paying attention. But you weren't. So your assumption is, hey, none of this has been done before, and yada, 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 and you're wrong. Or you're actually a paid operative that's working on behalf of President Trump to take that message away and make it all about law enforcement not being in a city to quell the dangerous protesters, all right? This is a PR game. Make no mistake about it. And those of you who don't think so, I'm going to tell you straight up, you're acting like fools. I'm not going to call you a fool because there could be other things you're completely right about. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark OaklandNewsNow.com, and never, ever judge a book by its cover. And don't be institutionally racist.